Mary Maslowski. I'm the chairperson of the Harwich Historic District and Historical Commission. I'd like to open our meeting for Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. It is 6 p.m. We are located at 732 Main Street in Town Hall in the Griffin Room. Before we start, as required by law, we are notifying you that the town may audio and video record this meeting. We are doing both. If any person in the audience is intending to also audio or video record, you're required to tell the chair at this time. Hearing none, we'll start with a roll call, please. Mr. Doan?
Bob Doan.
Julie Eldridge.
Brendan Lowney.
Jean Steiner.
So as we get started tonight, we have a lot more people in the audience than we typically do, so I'd just like to go over kind of the rules for the public hearings. We'll call the public hearings to an order. The applicant will be asked to give a presentation. We will have questions, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions. The applicants will sit at the front table. Members of the public will ask to go to the podium. We'll ask you to state your name and address for the record. We also have a sign-in sheet at the back. We'd ask that each of you sign the sign-in sheet so that we can keep track of who is in attendance this evening. We have been asked if it's possible to take number 4 out of order. It's a certificate of non-applicability. I'm going to ask the board if you're, is the board okay with taking that first? It's a certificate of non-applicability at 7.
Sure.
Yes.
Is that okay with everybody?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll call it to order. Item number 4 first. It is H H2019-26, the certificate of non-applicability, which has been received for 708 Main Street, map 41, parcel B-5 in the C-V and the Historic District, and Macris HRW.31. The application proposes work that does not involve a change in design, color, or outward appearance to the Greek Revival home, such as painting, shutters, window boxes, and lighting. The application is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 46, and the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 1, Jamie Seldorf as owner applicant. So if you could come forward.
Would you like me to give this to you? This is a sample of the shingles for the roof.
Okay, please, you're going to have to talk.
Would you like to have the swatches, the little samples for the paint for the
You can
front door?
certainly bring that forward.
Yes, and this
Thank
as
you.
well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, please state your name and address for the record.
Jamie Seldorf, 708 Main Street, Harwich, and also 174 Eastwood Road in Chatham.
Okay, so you're here before us tonight for a certificate of non-applicability for 708 Main Street.
Yes.
So if you could just give us an overview of what you're planning to do.
Well, we've already have approval to repaint, add shutters, replace the shutters, the window boxes. Tonight, we're just here to get approval for the shingles for the roof and for paint color for the front door.
Okay. So the certificate of non-applicability, as this, for the edification of everybody on the board, this property is located in the Historic District. We would either see a certificate of appropriateness or a certificate of non-applicability if it is just general maintenance and for like and kind, replacing like and kind for like and kind. So we have this certificate of non-applicability before us. Does anybody have any questions? So I'll ask, what colors are you planning to use on the?
The bottom one, the heritage red,
Okay.
and that's a historical color.
Any questions from members of the board? None. Any questions from anybody in the audience? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Mr. Doan.
I'll
Is
second.
there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Steiner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries to close the public hearing. So the chair would entertain a motion on the certificate of non-applicability. Chair would entertain a motion to either approve the motion, approve the certificate of non-applicability for the paint colors and the shingles at 708 Main Street. Our options are to approve, to deny, or to continue the vote.
I move to approve the,
Okay.
A second.
So motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mr. Lowney to approve the certificate of non-applicability. All those in favor?
aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. You're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so we are going to go back to the first item on our agenda. It is HH2019-23. It's a notice of intent which has been received for 521 Route 28, map 14, parcel P3-A in the C-D and Commercial Village Overlay District zones. The application proposes a partial demolition and rebuild of the middle portion of the building, and in addition, the application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Ronald M. Remendino as owner applicant. Good evening. If you could state your
Good
name.
evening, Thomas Moore Design Company, representing Ron Remendino, who's the owner of the property.
I need to recuse myself since Tom is my brother-in-law.
Okay. So just for the applicant's edification, we are a permitting board, so a positive vote will require 4 votes from this board. So you can either choose to, so you'll need a unanimous decision from the 4 remaining members. So you can either choose to continue or choose to go forward.
I say we got to move forward, so
Okay.
we'll do our,
Yeah,
Okay, no, that's fine.
Thanks. it's advisable too. Okay. So if you could
okay?
give us a run-through, please.
Yeah, this is a building that Ron has owned for 17 years, roughly?
About 20.
About
Almost
20 years, okay. And yeah, he owns building next door, Sativa. This is the Solus building. Originally, the front part of it, I believe, was, according to town records, was built in 1816. It's a little, I think, probably it was a half cape maybe at one point, but it's been altered a little bit with the bay window out front. The building in the back, there was an addition back in 2014. Where we're trying to work now is kind of in the middle of the building, where we're proposing to expand some of the retail space there. The addition, it's going to be a cape-style addition with dormers going out and connecting. We've got a couple of gable roofs there, when we're connecting with a shed roof, dormer type of connection in between. The materials of the new building or the addition are going to match the existing structure. Yeah, the roofing, siding, trim, size of rake boards, size of corner boards, everything's going to match the main building, or the front part, the structure. So
this matter was before planning board last night, and it got approval on the special permit. Are there any questions from members of the board? Looks like you're doing a second floor addition and rearranging.
yes, yes.
Could you review what exactly you're demolishing?
So there were some pictures that were submitted along with the application.
I'll go point it out to him. I'll show him what's coming out.
Yeah, so there's a little one-story section of the building
This right here.
right in here.
This back.
You're also dropping this too, correct?
That's going to stay. This gable stays.
Yeah.
It's on a slab. Right.
If you look at the left, the right side elevation, so that gable stays. Most of the addition is going to be behind the main building, so this gable here
You say,
stays.
so it all fills in, okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
so we just fill in between. So this gable, which is the addition, is roughly the same size, slightly in the main structure up front.
Then the connecting,
And there'll be a connecting,
yep.
connection between, yes.
So the impact will mostly be to the back, right? And the
The
side
impact
a
is
little
gonna be
bit?
mostly to the parking lot.
Right,
yes.
okay.
On the right, on the left side of it, it's pretty much all covered up because of the growth that's along that property line.
So if you could just restate that into the microphone for us, just so that the people at home can hear it. As
So
far
the-
as the impact is mostly,
So the impact is mostly on the parking lot side, less so on the neighbor's property line because of the trees and the growth that's on that side. So, and it is, it's kind of in the middle of the section, middle of the building, because it's a long building altogether, so. So it's the same like style structure with a connection in between, which is pretty typical for, Cape style architecture.
and in looking at the plans, it looks like the plans actually highlight where the new walls are going.
That's correct, yeah.
So if we look at A1 and A2, I believe those indicate the new wall.
That's
And
correct.
it shows where the existing walls are being removed.
Yes, there'll be some interior renovation of the, front part of the building, but there's nothing, we're not touching the outside of that building.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board?
So just essentially the side piece, this little, this piece on the side,
No, it's this piece right here.
right, that's changing.
This stays, this goes.
Right, but this, so the building part is gonna be the back of this, right?
Correct, they're gonna connect from here
Right,
to there.
right, okay, that's
and
what I
then it'll be
thought. I
built
just wanted to
up
make
right
sure I was reading it correctly. Okay, thanks.
Any questions from people in the audience? If the board is ready, has no further questions, we can move to close the public hearing.
I'll so move.
Second.
So Mrs. Steiner has moved, Mr. Lowney has seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None in opposition, motion is unanimous. So then our options at this time are to either vote to approve the application for the notice of intent and allow the building inspector to issue the demolition permit, or to impose a delay. It's the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve as stated.
All right, Mr. Lonnie has made a motion to approve the
Second,
notice of intent application as detailed.
and I'll second.
Mrs. Steiner has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None in opposition. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice when you have all that
Yeah,
documentation, isn't it?
yeah, that's great.
I saw it.
It's nice to see it.
Yeah,
Agreed.
they do nice work.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is, we'll open the public hearing for H H2019-24. It's a notice of intent, which has been received for 240 Route 28, map 12, parcel B3, in the C-H-1 zone. The application proposes 100% demolition of the former thrift shop and residence. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Roman Catholic Bishop of Fall River as owner, Bishop Edgar Moreira Dacuna as applicant. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Nolan. I am a resident of West Harwich. I am a volunteer for Holy Trinity, and I am here on behalf of the Bishop of Fall River with regard to our application for the removal of a structure on the Holy Trinity grounds. The structure has not been used for roughly 5 years. I know some of you had a chance to go in and tour the building. The use for that building, the last use was a thrift shop, which was moved across the street because it became handicap accessible and it was a little more convenient for folks over there. This structure is a tired structure. It's in need of some some upgrades, to say the least. I did submit a report from a inspection service, which I'm prepared to talk with you about. There's some cracking in the beams of that building, so it makes it, you know, it makes it somewhat structurally unsound. The septic is no longer in use. That had also failed, which affected the building in the back as well, so there's no ability to have the septic replaced, some beams replaced. The basement stairs, trying to get down there, I went down for my own inspection, and termites have come in there, and they've really done a number on it, as well as some other type of pests that are in that building. So, you know, it's been, you know, a lot of thought that it was decided that the structure it would be better off if it was removed. It will be replaced with grass. It will be all grass there. There's no intention to put up any other structure, no intention to pave this lot. It is strictly going to be removed, and grass will be placed there. That's all.
Okay, so the property in question is, you're obviously here because it's on our 100-year list. We'll start with questions from members of the board. Have anything?
Yeah, the core part of the house, and the original part, is a significant architectural piece. It's a Gothic revival of the Victorian period. Have you made any effort to have at least the main structure to be moved or relocated?
The structure is available for anyone for $1. We would give it to anybody if it was to be to moved. I would tell you that I don't think it would be able to make the trip structurally. I think it would have some serious challenges, but I am not an engineer, and I'm strictly a volunteer, but I don't think it would make it very far, Mr. Don. But we are not opposed to, if there's a party that would wish to have this structure, the bishop is all in favor. There's not going to be any issue with that.
I mean, my impression that overall, for the age of the house, it's actually in very good shape. I mean, yeah, you get termites or little things need to be done and things like that, but the house is, I think, is in far better shape than most that come before us. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay, anyone else? Jane.
I also got to tour it last week, and it's lovely inside, especially that glassed-in sunroom. So I would also wonder about the opportunity to move it somewhere. But I wondered if the church or the diocese had given any thought to use it for any kind of other community outreach program. I know it take some dollars invested in it, but I wonder if there's not some other use that could be, where it could be made to be a part of the community and stay as a part of the community.
No, I think it's a great question. When you look at the physical plant of the church, if you go over there, it is a significant physical plant. With the school being empty, there's plenty of other places that are available. I mean, there is a library there and kind of a meeting place, and they do host folks. That place right there, you know, it's knob and tube wiring, which, you know, that would all have to be upgraded. The septic is gone. Structurally, it's got some issues. There's some leaks in it. So I just think what it would take to make it accessible for all, which is what the goal is, and that's why we shifted over to the thrift shop across the street, because you can get in there. And there's other facilities on the grounds that, if we were looking for community space, that's probably where we would head. But I mean, I agree with you.
Thank you.
So I have one question to my board member. When is your next Affordable Housing Trust meeting?
I was thinking the same thing. Our next meeting is going to be on the 5th, I believe, and we have another one on the 19th. So.
Because I'm wondering if that isn't an option to save the building. Perhaps we do have an Affordable Housing Trust in Harwich. From my perspective, it would be nice to at least give them the opportunity to take a look and see if that's
Sure.
something that they have the money or the willingness to save and move to
Yeah.
another location.
Would absolutely entertain that.
So that being said, would the applicant be willing to, you know, have probably a month continuance on the public hearing? Because that would be my inclination right at this point. I'm personally not ready to vote, and it's going to take 4 votes for
Yeah.
us to,
And
To
what is the
approve it.
alternative would be to decline and put a 12-month delay on?
well, yeah, you're gonna need you need a positive motion, so, to approve this, the application for the notice of intent, you're gonna need 4 votes out of the 5 of us sitting here this evening.
Yeah, no,
So,
but if we don't, then you deny it, you don't have enough votes, and then what happens? I have to wait 1 year?
You'd have to wait 1
1
year.
year,
There's a 1-year demolition delay. Now, certainly if there was an alternative, you could certainly work with the board, and that could be shortened given certain circumstances if things play out,
Yeah.
and you're able to move, but, where, it just seems like it's, as Mr. Doan said, much better condition than a lot of the buildings that come before us of like age. So, I think it might be nice to have the opportunity to see if the Affordable Housing Trust, where they have money on hand, might be interested in the building, and they might come back and tell us no, or and tell you no, but just wondering about options.
I guess that and any other kind of thing you'd like to run out, if we could just get it all going in the next 30 days, we'll explore anything. That's not an issue for us.
Okay,
So I'm happy to continue for 30 days, but if there's anything else that the members think that we should be exploring so that we come back, I don't want to come back and get another continuance for 30 days.
I mean, that would have been my only thought. I was gonna suggest that.
Yeah.
And we do have meetings coming up. I know the property has some challenges because it sits, it's not its own lot. It sits within the whole property line of the church and all the other buildings. So there's, to separate that would be, working with the town and maybe the Affordable Housing Trust, and then legality of, a potential rental property.
Are we talking about keeping it where it is?
Or moving it.
I'm saying we're
Yeah,
moving
yeah,
it.
We're just talking
cons-
options.
Yeah, we would have to be just strictly to move it.
You want to get rid, yeah, got it,
It's,
understood.
anything else, and, make it available for $1 to anybody over this 30-day period, if that's,
So we have some people in the audience that I think are all here to, to comment.
Great.
So I'd like to give these people the opportunity
Sure.
to comment and see. So anybody that'd like to speak, ask questions,
Great.
speak in favor, or speak in opposition, please come to the podium, state your name and address for us.
Good evening. My name is Dan Gooden. I'm a year-round full-time resident of Harwich. I live at 230-28. My house is part of the Captain John Williams Condo Association. We are neighbors and direct abutters to the Holy Trinity Church property and this subject tear down. On behalf of myself and my neighbors at Captain John Williams Condos, we ask that you deny this demolition request today. And we also ask that the Catholic bishop be a good neighbor and remove this demolition application. This is a beautiful turn-of-the-century home. It's served as a farmstead, rectory, thrift shop. It's a building that served the community and has been part of this neighborhood for 100 years. We are concerned about the history here in Harwich, the character and charm of our neighborhood. And while the Catholic Bishop of Fall River spokesperson and persons from Holy Trinity have expressed that they cannot afford to renovate this building and currently plans to put anything in its place, we respectfully asked, did you seek more than one opinion on the condition of this building? Did you get cost estimates to make the repairs compared to the cost estimates for demolition? And what the environmental impact of demolishing this building will be and what you plan to do with this debris. And if this building is truthfully for sale for $1, are you considering splitting the land off? You would be interested in actually purchasing it or leasing the land to somebody that wants to purchase this building for $1. And lastly, I just wonder when deferred maintenance on behalf of the church becomes a time to demolish a building. I want to thank the Historical Commission for taking time to hear this very important case today and letting us speak. Thank you.
Anyone else? Or do you have anything to say?
no, I'll just let
Okay,
everyone speak, and I'll,
Okay, anything else?
that's what I can.
Please.
Hi, my name is Lenny Kalbeck, and I'm an electrician, and I've done all the electrical work in that building for the last 40 years. I live right next door to the Holy Trinity Church on the opposite side. He lives on one side, I live on the other side. My house is a Bessie Lothrop house. It's 150 years old. You know, I appreciate Cape Cod architecture, and because they're all individual, unique pieces of property. But this piece of property, I know because I've crawled through one end of that basement to the other end of that basement. And when they decided to make it a thrift shop, we completely went through that whole entire house, and we put in all new electrical wiring. I have separate circuits for the air conditioning. I have separate circuits for the dishwasher. I have separate circuits for the wash machine, the refrigerator. All the counter plugs, all the wiring in that building has been replaced. Now, what he's saying about the knob and tube wiring in there, that's all been disconnected. It's no longer connected. So if you go up there and you say, oh, there's knob and tube in there, it's been disconnected. Not only did I put individual circuits throughout the entire building, we replaced the service inside and out with circuit breakers. The wiring is pristine in that building. Now, I contacted the electrical inspector today, and I asked him, I said, anybody contact you to come in and, check out the building for the electrical situation there? And he said, no. Now, all the work that I've done in there in the past, I have taken out permits. I've got permits on all the wiring. So when they say the wiring in this building is inferior or there's a problem with it, that's not true, okay? I'm the one that did it. I have all the permits, and I can verify it. I hope this board tonight, or whenever you decide, that you take your time on allowing this building to be destroyed. It's a beautiful piece of property in our neighborhood, and it would be missed if that piece of property is gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sally.
Good evening. I'm Sally Urbano from Harwich. Welcome to anyone that's from Fall River, and welcome to the Harwiches, 7 villages. We are a community here. And as of late, we've been very concerned about the demolishing of the historic buildings in our town, and our culture, and our history. If you doubt our resolve, I suggest you get a copy of the Cape Cod Chronicle this week that'll talk to you about the commission, the Cape Cod Commission's okay for the West Harwich District of Critical Planning Concern. But this is our community, and 2 years ago, I visited Rome. And I would say probably by extension, Rome
Sally,
is, yes?
If we can stick to the
Yeah,
word.
I am. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. My point was, somebody back long ago in Rome said, this is an important piece of our history to share with the world. Somebody set it aside. I'm saying that's what needs to happen here. This is an important part of our history, and I'm not one that thinks that moving it it sort of impacts its historical significance. So if the 1 year is imposed, I would hope that we could reach out and work with the group from the church to find a way to kind of put it into use again, if that's at all possible. Thank you.
So just to clarify for everybody in the room, so that people understand what the demo delay is, if this board chooses to impose the demolition delay, it puts a 12-month delay, but that's all it is. And once the time frame is up, the applicant could then move forward with demolishing the building. So I just want to be clear for everybody in the audience that they understand what our demolition delay would or wouldn't do. Is there anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak?
Debbie Copperthorne, 236 Route 28. I'm in a butter to the church, and I just feel as though it would be a shame to destroy that lovely piece of property. And I agree that too many older properties are destroyed and still in good condition. So if you would consider not allowing it to happen, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
All right. Hi, my name is Beth Williams. I'm a property owner at 45 Route 28, West Harwich. Our building is 192 years old, and we've been working on it constantly for 20 years. And I think that the Catholic Church in Harwich needs to be a better neighbor. Harwich has supported this Catholic Church forever, and they're an intrinsic part of our community, and they need to be a better neighbor. We need to save our community from this kind of, and it's demolition by neglect, and it's just wrong. Thank you.
Hi, my name is James Gooden. I also live at 236 Route 28. I would just like to see that the church put forward an effort to try to save this building in some way. I live right next door to it. I've been told by many people this has been sold for $1 for years. I've seen nothing of this anywhere. I don't know where that came from. I'd love to see them, in good faith, put as much effort as they can into saving this building where it is before they just decide to demolish it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, Lou Urbano, 152 West Harwich, Riverside Drive, forgive me. I understand a demolition delay, and basically the people in this room are asking a year. But the people in this room aren't speaking just for the demolition delay. We're saying to the Catholic Church, to the bishop, that the community would like the bishop to work with the community. The body is saying, help us. There is no reason to demolish this building. We all know that. I can't tell you how many times these people have heard termite ridden and the roof is caving. Times a day. It's a beautiful house. Sell it, lease it, work with the community. Have a weekly offering at the church to fix it. Has that been done?
No, the church
Over the last 10 years has that been done?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken.
No, that's,
I'll wait till.
Yeah, there's ways of doing it, and I think even those members coming in from out of town would be happy to put something in the basket every week in order to get the money to fix it. Work with the community. Thank you.
thanks, Lou. Anyone else?
My name is Deacon John Foley from Holy Trinity. I'm considered staff there, I guess, an unpaid staff member. For clarification, just before I have a statement. If it's denied and it goes to the 1-year waiting process before demolition, is there any other hearings on it, or is it just sit there? Could we continue to negotiate with someone to take it down and move it, or does that kill that opportunity as well?
So if you had if during the 12-month delay you had discussions with somebody to move it, you could come back and seek the
And
pleasure
claim
of
and
the
say
board
that. So,
if
okay.
the board was willing to allow that at that time.
Okay.
So yes, there's.
So it doesn't end negotiations with trying to move the property, it just starts the clock ticking on the demolition if that were the end result? Okay, wonderful. My only statement tonight will be, that's a surplus building for Holy Trinity right now. As most people know, the popular religions are declining in participation. We have to self-fund our parish. We don't get money from Fall River, we don't get money from Rome. We are a self-sustaining parish. We barely have the money to keep up with the building maintenance on the church and the school and the chapel in the back, the Adoration Chapel. The building became surplus when we realized we couldn't keep up with it. And the thrift shop was not accessible to handicapped personnel. The school became empty because, again, Catholic children stopped going to school. We closed the school for the second time. We moved it over there where it had adequate air conditioning and heat, handicapped accessibility, lighting, parking, safe, and it was a great place, a great move. It made the building surplus. Throughout the entire Diocese of Fall River, we are coming into this now with surplus properties because of the decline of religious people going to Mass, supporting us financially. Recently in Fall River, they've sold off 2 churches. It's heartbreaking, but it's a reality of how we're going to support ourselves as a faith community here in Harwich. I love the community support, but we don't possibly have any money to fix that building up. So the idea was to demolish it. We can't sell it and break it off. It's one parcel of land. I can almost guarantee no one in town would allow a curb cut on 28 and a separate land to make it separate housing. But we can't let it operate on our property and take the liability of a safe or sober house or affordable housing. It wouldn't work. We're self-insured as a diocese. We don't have State Farm insurance. It just wouldn't work. It would have to be subdivided by the town. I don't think they would do it. They need their own curb cut on 28 State Road. That could take 5 years. In the meantime, we can't put any money into it to even keep it where it's at. So I guess this is as much to the neighbors as much as we're trying to do the best we can. We thought green space would be better than the building to continue to fall apart. As Joe mentioned, we're glad to have somebody move it off the property. If the Affordable Housing Trust has a piece of land in town, move it there and then renovate it with your money. But it can't be renovated where it is for anything other than being moved off the property. So again, I just wanted to state that as a staff member of the church and bring our facts forward that we're self-sustaining and we do not have the money to do anything more than what we're barely doing now. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
Nancy Pollard, North Road, West Harwich. I understand everything this gentleman has said, because money is what we all worry about personally and academically and church-related. However, the Urbanos and myself, among many others, have been working for years and years on the Captain's Row, the Cape Cod Commission, et cetera. We have finally received good news on that part of the deal, and now here we are once again fighting City Hall, as the expression goes. Another house that sounds like, to me, has been let go. All of these things that they are speaking about are things that could have been addressed somewhere along the line. I live in an 100-year-old plus house on the river, which we purchased and totally did over. And it's not that big of a deal. We went down to the studs. And as this gentleman, electrician, stated, that the biggest parts is wiring and that type of thing. But the termite situation can be fixed, obviously. The beams can be fixed. They were fixed in my house. The wiring was fixed in my house. It's because my house had been let go also and hadn't been maintained. All of these things happen to a 100-year-old property somewhere along the line. But maybe, and I'm not trying to point fingers, I'm just pointing this out, that if some money had been put over the years, these things could have been maintained, because this stuff happens. But it is a beautiful home, and when I read it in the paper about this, I went, here we go again, trying to save another lovely part of Harwich, which is one of the oldest parts for the captain's homes, et cetera, et cetera. I appreciate the fact that you're talking about putting grass in and not some horrible thing like we've been through with Dollar General and all of this other stuff. That's another whole story. But I think somewhere along the line, a couple of $100,000 or maybe even less could be put into it and it used for some sort of a good Christian usage, whether it's for homeless, low income, something. So it would be maintained as a beautiful site and kept in Harwich. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I can add some of them. I mean, I was relying, I mean, obviously Len is a
Sure.
fantastic electrician, has done work for my family on Dunes Road. I don't question his judgment. We did have a home inspector that went out in that report. That's what I relied upon. We are happy to work, with the trust, delay this 30 days. But just so we're clear, the structure has to come off the property. We can't leave it where it is. So I'm happy to come back here and engage with anybody you want, if you
Okay.
want to engage with me.
So, so I would suggest that if somebody could reach out to through the selectman's office for the housing trust.
I will do that.
And then perhaps talks can get started,
Great.
at least to see if it's even something that they'd be interested in. So before we continue, I just want to make, we do have one department comment on the property. It is from the Conservation Commission. The lot is actually in conservation jurisdiction, as the building is within a flood zone. The Conservation Department's comment is that removal of the building is fine as long as the debris is removed and the disturbed area is seeded or vegetated with native plants. This is viewed as a benefit to the resource area, so they do not need, so the applicant would not need to file with the commission, and the Conservation Department would recommend approval as far as the conservation benefits are concerned. So I just wanted to read that into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Before we go any further. So if we continue the hearing to our next meeting. Yeah, it should be December 18th, which is the third Wednesday in December. That's okay.
And I was just checking my email. The next Affordable Housing Trust meeting is December 5th, between 2 and 4.
Excellent.
So, with your consent, the chair would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing until Wednesday, December 18th, no earlier than 6 p.m.
I move to continue the hearing, the
So-
public hearing.
So,
Thank you very much.
opposition?
Thank you.
So I just have one thing, if you could just sign this for us. It's on the continuation. You could just sign the continuation for us, that'd be great. We'll send a copy over.
Oh, of course.
If you want to write your address underneath it, I can have us mail you a copy of that in the morning.
I understand what Mr. Foley was saying. So, because it's one property, you just can't, you could.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You look at the town and other.
We'll see you next month. All right. Just give me a second to read it first, because I gotta find my, I'll figure out where I am here.
That was awesome inside. Right? Yeah, the new place
Okay.
is pretty cool.
Next.
So the next item on our agenda is the public hearing for HH 2019-25. So we'll open that public hearing for a notice of intent which has been received for 165 Gorham Road 24, parcel R3-6 in the R-R zone. The application proposes the addition of a front dormer and a 16-foot by 16-foot sunroom. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Chapter 131, Historic Preservation, Article 2, Mark and Lisa Hay as owners, Peter Bernard, Cape Coastal Builders, Inc. as applicants. Welcome.
Hi.
Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure.
Yeah, Lisa Hagel, 165 Gorham Road.
I'm Peter Bernard, Cape Coastal Builders.
Great. So if you could give an overview of your application, please.
Sure. We basically are taking, we're adding a dormer, a 17-foot by 8-foot 6 dormer to the front of the existing home. All the finishes are to match what's existing. And on the south side of the house, we're going to add a sunroom, which I believe is 16 by 16 feet, with finishes to match what's existing. So the historic material to be removed is basically the roof where the dormer will be installed. God bless you. And a cased opening area to sunroom to the house.
Thanks, Julie. All right, so any questions from members of the board? Anything?
I'm just digesting this. So essentially, the dormer will go on the front in front of the chimney, to the left of the door as you face the house.
Yes.
Correct? And then the sunroom is?
The sunroom is on
Side.
the south-facing side of the house. This picture right here depicts the area where it's going to be.
To the left of the chimney.
Okay, to the left of the chimney, that's what I was thinking, because I'm looking at this front elevation here. Right, so this is the sunroom?
Yeah, this is the sunroom.
Right, okay.
It doesn't exist at all.
Right.
I just need to recuse myself again.
Again?
Well, Tom's
Sorry.
the architect.
Sorry, so
Go ahead.
you're left with 4 of us.
All right, no worries.
Small town.
So we love historic homes, we've owned several, and we love old things, and the inside is beautiful and antique, and we just need more closet space, and really that's the purpose of the dormer, and the sunroom is just to expand the existing house and to keep it in keeping with the look. We don't want to add anything modern or new or crazy or what have you.
This, may I ask a question?
Of course.
This part here is not part of the original house.
Well, so apparently that was the original kitchen of the home, according to our neighbor whose aunt used to own the home. So, yeah, it's an odd-looking thing. It's currently a little bedroom, but that's what we were told. So it's kind of a cool structure inside with a high ceiling and all the old king pine.
So in looking at the house, the dormer's gonna go right into the chimney. The addition's going to the left.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board? Because we are again here on a notice of intent for demolition, so they are here strictly for permission to remove parts of the structure, to add the roof, dormer, and to add the addition.
Correct.
Mr. Dillon, any questions?
No, not really a question, just a comment that it is a disappointment to put a dormer on that side because it does affect the cape. I mean, it's like a cape full, or it's actually a cape half house with the center of the chimney. But on the other hand, the dormer you're putting on is actually kind of like it would have been done. It was done back at the turn of the century. That's the kind of dormer they would have put on, so other than that, I don't have any objection.
Okay. Brendan?
Quick question on the roof on the dormer front. That's going to be asphalt shingle?
Yeah, asphalt to match. In fact,
So that
we're going to
pitch
replace the
allows
whole
for that?
front.
Okay. So not rubber, just want to make sure it wasn't a rubber.
No,
roof.
no, no, it'll be asphalt.
Okay, any questions or comments from people in the audience? All right, any other questions from members of the board? Is the board ready to close the public hearing?
I so move.
All right,
I'll
Mrs. Steiner has
second.
moved to close the public hearing. Bob Jones has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. All right,
That was easier than the last one, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, well, we haven't voted
We're not
yet.
talking- we haven't voted yet,
We haven't
wait.
voted yet.
We're ready to go.
I know, I already got my shovel.
So,
Oh.
so the chair would entertain a motion on the application for the notice of intent.
So I move to accept the application as stated.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to approve the notice of, the demolition permit as detailed in the application for the notice of intent.
Right. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So motion's been made by Mrs. Steiner, seconded by Mr. Lowney. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any in opposition? No, we are unanimous. Or nothing. Thank you very much. We'll let the building department know.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. And Julie is back to the table.
You're back.
Like musical chairs.
Oh, I was wondering why Tom was staying here, and that wasn't Tom, I'm like, oh gosh, he's the architect on that one too.
I wondered why he was still in the audience.
Derek's sister, one of his.
One of many.
When you recuse yourself, do you have to leave the room, or can you?
Typically, you should leave the room, but
Right. Yeah, I think you gotta leave the room if you're gonna recuse yourself, but just, future.
sure we'll have
so
to go.
next item on the agenda, on camera.
Mm-hmm.
We have minutes from September 18th and October 16th. Has everyone had an opportunity to
Yeah.
review them?
Yes.
So the chair would entertain a motion to accept the minutes for September 18th and October 16th and place them on file.
Motion to approve minutes from 9:18 and 10:16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's made by Brendan, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. We have in our packet, request for advisory opinions from the Zoning Board of Appeals. (160) Route 137, 210 Queen Anne Road, 47 Harbor Road, Ave, and I don't know if there's anything that the board wishes to comment on. Nothing at this time?
Nothing.
All right, so, moving on. The next item on our
It's actually a
agenda
cop,
is
sorry.
our
Can't get rid of it.
calendar for next year.
Uh-huh.
So, just looking at the public hearings, sticking to the third Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock. We do also have some public meetings that we typically have but don't use unless they're necessary for timing. If any of these dates strike anybody as problematic, then let me know and we can look to move them. But as it stands right now, I think this would be our schedule for next year. anything?
Which one is this one?
So, this board always used to have a working group meeting on the first Wednesday of the month.
Mhm.
So we typically have them in case they're needed, but we
Oh, okay.
haven't really had the,
I was gonna say, I didn't know if I was missing something.
no, we haven't
Okay.
really used them, I don't think, even since I was on the board.
No, only
Um,
occasionally.
Yeah,
Right.
so, it just gives us, reserves the room just in case we need it. Does the board okay with these dates?
Do you need a
Yes.
motion to accept
Oh,
them?
do you
I
want
do.
I move to accept the calendar as presented,
Perfect.
schedule
I'll second it.
2020.
So motion's been made by Mr. Doan, seconded by Mrs. Eldridge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none in opposition, motion carries. Next item, there is a grant opportunity that came forward, and I don't see it in my packet. It was 1772 grant opportunity for historic preservation projects.
I don't get anything
Did
in my.
any of you
Know
get
what
it?
that is.
Did any of
No.
you get that in
I
your,
didn't get it in mine.
in your agenda packet?
No.
All right, I don't see it in mine either. There was an email that was forwarded to us by Charlene that she was aware of, that was a grant project for, some historic preservation. If memory serves, when I looked at it, I wanna say it was more for items and documents and things of that sort. But I will circulate that,
Did Charlene send it to all of us or just to you?
no, I think
Okay.
she sent it to me, and I think she sent it to me on my work email, and I
Ah.
had forwarded it, and I
Gotcha.
thought it was in the it was supposed to be in the packet, but I don't see it here unless I'm just blind. So, that being said, I will ask Amy to forward that packet to everybody tomorrow so that you can, take a look at it and see if it's, anything of interest that we should be pursuing, or, if it's something we
For historic
should take some
preservation
time.
projects,
Yeah,
okay.
should take
Stuff
some
around
time to look
town or
at.
something, or?
Yeah, it was, I'm drawing a blank on it at the moment. I want to say it was for preservation of things, like, documents, books.
It'd be nice to have bigger signs in Harwich Center, showing it was historic district.
The library typically
I always
asks
complain about
for
those, I
The
don't.
signs?
The signs, they're
They're
like,
every-
they're,
Yeah.
but they're so small, it's
Yeah.
like, you don't really, I don't really notice them,
Yeah.
that's all.
You know, I was in Bath, Maine a few weeks ago, and I took pictures of the signs because I was so fascinated by them. But what I realized was even though they were different, the signs were, every single one of them came off, usually at a right angle to the building. This is in the
Oh,
business
okay.
section. And they all were on some kind of, like a wrought iron
Oh,
thing. But they weren't all the same design, but it was all the same material. And it was really
Interesting.
interesting from a consistency
yeah,
standpoint, because I know that's one of the things that Bath has done in the past, is they try and find something that's consistent, that, gives
little
you
different
a
but
feel that,
consistent, yeah.
so it's not cookie cutter,
yeah.
but it pulls it all together.
So, okay, I will get those emailed to you on that, grant project, or grant opportunity. Item C, things and other reports by board members and staff. Mr. Doan, would you like to give us a CPC update?
We already got there? Yeah, the CPC would, at this point, we're going through the hearing from the interested parties and the applications, and this coming up on December 3rd, which is when we're gonna do our presentation for our submittal. Other than that, I don't know if there's any other things worth mentioning at this point, because nothing's really been heard yet.
No.
From the historic standpoint.
Not at all. How about subcommittee reports?
Subcommittee, we've, Gene Brendan and I are still struggling through the bylaws and things. It's really very difficult because it's one of those things, throw out everything and start over, or do you you know, that they're very old, and there's so many others out there, and that's one thing Jeannie has been really looking around for things.
So are we talking bylaws or guidelines?
Guidelines.
Historic
No,
guidelines.
just wondering where you're
No,
starting,
no,
like what your
bylaws.
scope
No,
is.
no, no, no.
Because I don't want you to have
We
to.
we get off subject on bylaws occasionally, but we pull back in, I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
don't
We've been
disagree with
looking
you.
a lot at like the demolition delay and the remedies for people that abuse it, don't comply with it, you know? And what we found is that in many towns in Massachusetts, the town puts a 2-year delay on a building permit if someone, you know, doesn't comply
Violates.
with the demolition delay requirements. Or they go in
So if they exceeded the scope, or if they knocked down a building without getting it?
both,
Interesting.
and also
Also
neglect.
Neglect,
Right.
demolition by.
And we don't have
But now,
anything
that's a bylaw,
Yeah.
that's not a historic
Right.
district, so.
Right.
Say we're kind of steering up.
But
Fortunately,
those weren't, Bob, the ones that I looked at were in the historic district, in the different
well,
towns,
they're in the
yes,
district too,
yeah.
but I think the umbrella is the general bylaws,
Right.
and then the district's very specific
Right.
to an area.
Yeah.
And they may be just repeated, maybe they're different for the district, because it's so
They
serious.
usually have like a statement, you know, but as I started to go through, because I was trying to pull some things together, make it cohesive, and ours is written pretty well. I mean, thanks to Salem, whoever did it in Salem. But I think we need to put in some of that other, you know, some of the other requirements. I think we can, you know.
The other thing with it, and we, is that ours is guidelines and like documentation. It's almost an education thing.
Yeah.
So half of it's spent on talking about why this and that thing, and then it will have a couple bullet points of what your rules are or your actual guidelines, and it actually almost confuses it because
Yeah.
it makes it an awkward document. And it might be split those apart, just have one, why you do this in Harwich.
Right.
And then the other is, these are the actual rules, these are the materials you can use, et cetera. Now fortunately, we're going to a Cape Cod Commission meeting on this tomorrow.
Oh, great.
That they're reviewing new materials and things like that.
So that's,
That's gonna be important.
yeah, and
It
that's.
fits into right what we're doing.
So that's great, because it will also be helpful when they get into the rules and regulations for the DCPC as well. I actually think you guys are probably smart to split up that document and have it be guidelines and one be kind of educational materials, in that I don't even know that you need to get into the whys as much as the historic district has these rules.
Right.
You know, these are the guidelines, this is what's allowable, this is
Right.
what's not.
Right.
If you're doing X, you need to come before the board
Right.
as an educational side, and then,
Yeah.
and then, you know, your guidelines being
The
pretty
educational gives
self-explanatory.
you background of why you want to do this and what is typical for that period, things, and one Victorian, well, yeah, really one Victorian, it's all Greek revival
Right.
for the most part, other than modern.
and then
so.
the rebuilt,
But
and then the buildings like this.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, no, and this is an interesting architecture in the
It is.
original part of the building, so.
But one of the things that I've found that I think is really kind of neat in some of them, like Lexington has a really well-done guideline. I mean, it's like 70-odd pages long, but one of the things they did is they provided a lot of visuals in there. So they have, I mean, this is color pictures of things that have been restored and done well. And so I think as someone's looking for information, it gives them a sense of, oh, this is what it could be, and a sense of maybe the community, of how it's you know, these fit into the community. And there's a little bit of a sense of pride, I think, when people look at that. They also had, and this is something that would be easy to do, just like a stylized map of what the different historic districts were. Now, we only have one that we're working on right now. We've got a proposed one in West Harwich, but, you know, that's nice for people to see too. So I think there are some really good best practices that can be taken from some of these.
You did bring up a good question about the West Harwich. How will that involve? Does that involve what we're doing? Are we gonna plant the same,
So I do not believe that we will have any jurisdiction over the area of the DCPC. I would actually think that they may end up, if they do something of historic nature, that it may actually be separate, a separate board or a separate commission.
But it would still, some of it would still fall to us.
Excuse me, sorry. But I would say there's gonna be a lot of work that needs to be done over the next
year?
6 months to the year with zoning changes and guidelines and everything else. So I would suggest if anybody is willing to spread themselves a little more thin, that the selectmen may be looking for some additional input on that portion as well. So
And Mary,
I throw that out there.
DCPC,
District of Critical Planning Concern.
Okay, I had part
So-
of it, yeah.
Will that then always fall under the Cape Cod Commission, or is it turned over to the town and?
So the Cape Cod Commission has the authority to put it in, and then they work with the town. Sorry.
I get the same comments.
Sorry, yeah, it's just.
Eric's getting over one.
I'm trying not to
Eric,
talk
not to
too
come?
much, because it's just.
They'll put together new zoning
I might have mints, too.
and
But it's not necessarily a historic district.
no, in fact, it is planning guidelines. My understanding is
Love a cough drop.
I'd love one, thank you. My understanding is it is, the planning and the zoning would take into consideration the historic nature.
Right.
Because that's one of the categories of the DCPC. So, from that perspective, it will, they're gonna look at that when they're saying what's allowable and what should or shouldn't be built. Anything else?
If they have handouts at tomorrow's meeting, can you grab one?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Or a lot of times they have them online
Yeah.
afterwards,
I
I
think
think,
the
don't
other
they?
thing is, that there may be some opportunity tomorrow, if so many people from across the Cape to float the idea of moving this building.
Yeah.
There, because, you know, that group has done that in the past. I know Sarah has looked for buyers or floated buildings like from Chatham, that, not float, that's a bad pun.
Well, no, they used to float them.
True, they did float it.
They did.
Yep.
We had a couple in the last, maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
That had, I think, had come down from, one had come from Nantucket maybe, and one had come from South Coast someplace.
It's
Crazy.
amazing.
Could you imagine doing that?
We
What do you think
actually
about
looked
it?
at a house that's now on Sisson, right next to Mooncusser's, when we first came, and it was a great house. It had huge wide boards on the floor and real cozy fireplace, and then they had, you know, added on to it as it sat in that. But the idea of it floating from Nantucket just be
Right?
amazing.
Crazy. So I think that's great. I'll be really interested to hear what happens at the meeting tomorrow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Any other Board of Commission update, Brendan? Sorry to throw you kind of under the bus there into the fire.
Oh, the Affordable Housing
Yeah.
Trust? Oh, that was okay. No, I think it's important to make sure they exhaust everything, because, you know, I think they were, you know, looking just to get the year delay, so I think it's nice we extended it, and maybe they'll, you know, figure something out.
I wish there could be
So
something
if you
done there.
talk to your chair in the next day or two, could you?
Well, that's also an issue, because Chris is no longer here.
No, oh, that's true.
Right, so
That's
we're
right.
reorganizing, so the meetings, we're not having a meeting this Thursday.
Right.
So
But
we moved
Selectman
it to the.
Howell's still on it, so
Yeah,
if,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, he's the vice chair, he'll step into that
All right.
role, and whether, you know, Joe Powers steps in, well, yeah, I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
So we'll figure out
I think
something.
they're all working a lot of stuff out, it seems like.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm hoping that meeting on the 5th happens, but hopefully the church can reach out. On the Affordable Housing Trust, we're working on a couple of properties, Oak Street and Sisson, two properties we're working on right now, and other things, and CPC money and stuff, so things are going pretty well, moving along.
All right.
Is that the one that sort of goes off if you're going down towards 28? It's on the left?
It's
In like a little.
System is where the, it's where the
junior
theater is.
Oh,
back
I
It's
thought
that
you
trail.
meant behind there.
Yeah.
Okay.
right across the street
Okay.
from Farmers Market.
Different from Chloe's Path, which is down
Right.
near the
Right.
police station.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
that's what
different.
I was
Yeah,
thinking
Chloe's
of.
Path-
Is that
That's a
affordable
different-
housing also down
Well,
in there?
that's in
Excuse me, that was
contention.
presented at one of our meetings as just a developer and the owner of the property came, and they were just talking about possibilities.
Right.
So there was no, offer extended, nor was there any ask. So they're just feeling out what could, but they want to, there's a possibility to put 50 units in there. And they have a plan for it, so.
The other on 137, weren't they thinking doing something there? I was
That's
say
a different
next to the theater, but it's not the theater anymore. It's the
Yeah, I
school.
mean, right now we have our top, the
Yeah.
top three, and those are three we're working on right now, so.
Awesome.
And where's the
Okay.
one on Oak Street?
Golf course, left-hand side. A lot of acreage, but
Oh,
we found out you can only maybe put one house there, so
Oh,
it's a lot of effort for one unit.
Yeah.
We are, so we have to, that could be something that goes to Habitat, or, we could figure something out. But we're trying to figure out all of our options and just,
Right.
all the programs that could be available to the trust. Outside of, getting a developer to build 50 units, there's gonna be other things, so we're working on.
right.
Anything else that the board members would like to talk about tonight?
Only
For
under old
updates.
business.
Old business?
Old business, update on potential 2020 CPC request from Historic. Mr. Doan, you're on again.
Yes, I am. So, I'm going to hand out,
It's out of your way, sorry.
this is our first shot at proposed clusters in Harwich, and this actually is credited to Miranda Dupree, who, as part of her last project, when she worked for us, actually had started taking maps and identifying areas with some concentration of houses. And I've taken those maps, and I'm sorry, I meant to bring them so you could see them, but I can bring them to the next meeting. But these are some of the key areas that she had highlighted. And I can kind of go through them. It's, the first one's Pleasant Lake Avenue. I call it south of Route 6, which is from Howard Center outward. And it's a few houses just outside of Howard Center, like your property there. And then it really is just dispersed out until you get then the north of Route 6. That gets very tightly up near Long Pond, where they had the controversy about replacing the road, but it would be into the houses and all that. All those houses are a very tight cluster of older homes that might be worthy of looking at. Squanton Road, it's the whole west end of Long Pond. It's identified as an area, but it's unclear of how many houses might qualify there. But it's something just to look at, I think. Parallel Street, very high density, and I go down that street, and this is the other part that's not historic district. And really, the houses are very, for the most part, old, a
They
few
are.
new ones intermixed,
And there's
And
some
year
great-
round, too.
around,
Residents, yeah.
and people take pride in them.
Yeah,
There's some
Work into it.
great renovation going on
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that one, and
Great street.
just a note that if that were to become a cluster, I don't know if it talked in the past, but it might be an extension of the historic. And around Sisson Road, down to like where the Howardsport Golf Club is, but very spread out. I'm not sure if it qualifies as a cluster per se, but it's an area. And this one I call Howard Center outside of district. There are quite a few houses that on Oak and and even down a little bit on Forest Street that could be incorporated into the historic district if there was an interest in that. Herring River East, which is Mill Point and Chase Street. This is very interesting. And I didn't realize Mill Point was that old, 1920 as a division. And particularly along the riverside, there's quite a few older houses in there. We've had them come before us in the thing where they've done modifications, and they are it's a very interesting, as well
We
as.
always refer to it as Old Mill Point, not Mill Point,
Right,
so.
right.
But,
That would be kind of
but
nice
still.
too, as the whole West Harwich district.
Well,
develops, you know,
yeah,
it kind of ties in
yeah,
nicely.
exactly. And the west of Riverside Drive is another, but looking at it, a lot of houses, and since I've been on the board too, we've lost two old houses on Riverside Drive, which are a real shame because they were
they're beautiful
oversized cottages style, and they're very, very interesting, but they're gone. But maybe that might be the whole Herring River, might be a cluster itself, which would make sense. And as you say, tie that in, because that is going right up to the Captain's Row area. Interesting on the Captain's Row's there's two, and that's under the Cape Cod Commission. But West Harwich, south of Route 28, where Belmont, Willow Street, and Silver, there's a very high density of older homes that would make a very nice cluster, as well as it feeds right in again to the West Harwich Captain's Row. North of West Harwich, that's pretty spotty. One little small cluster.
Now, we're talking as clusters for us to do a deeper dive into the
Yeah.
into the
Yeah,
history.
these are to identify potential ones, and I think the point is part of the study. One, we should look at these ourselves, look at the maps, but one of them, for instance, like Harwich Port, I call it Harwich Port proper, it's a huge area, and its houses are interspersed. You get a lot of Victorians and things like that, but it's very unclear what you can do with it, and really need a consultant to look at that, you know, who we'd hire with the money to look at that and determine how that might play into a cluster, or whether it's not, it's too dispersed. I don't know, but you know, whenever you look at the old roads, and you'll see them here, whether it be Lower County Road or Route 28, all along Route 28, you have plenty of old homes, and Chatham Road is another big area. Queen Anne Road's an area, not as dense, but these were the old byways of Harwich. And that there are definitely some interesting houses along those, or homes, or properties to look at. Bank Street is a huge one. Where is that? Yeah, Bank Street. There's a lot of houses. I didn't realize how big an area. I knew it. The south side is very impressive with some gorgeous Victorian homes
Yeah,
there.
it's really pretty.
And the north has quite a few of them, but there's a lot of houses on Bank Street. And would that be a whole cluster, or you do a north and south? I'm not sure. But basically, this is the start of identifying it, and this is what I'll put as part of our
But it's to
attached
bring
report.
clusters into the historic district.
Yeah, and because you have the clusters or areas, historic areas, under Macris, you file them under, it's called a filing.
Oh, okay.
So you take the individual house and you put them in a cluster, and then that you document why did that cluster develop? Why was that area developed? And you document it, and that's all part of your historic inventory for the town. When you go do your long-term historic planning, you may say that, oh, this area is very of interest, but this area, it only has 3 or 4 houses over a mile distance. Well, you know, you're not gonna call that a cluster, but it's for future planning.
But if you were to tell the story of the town for
Right.
tourism,
Oh, absolutely.
if you expanded on the
Right.
current historic
Right.
district that's in the center of Harwich, and you went down Bank Street, and you went Parallel Street and stuff, I mean, you could really, and South and Forest even, you could really,
Yeah.
I mean, you could do great walking tours through
Oh,
that. You
absolutely.
could do all kinds of things, so I think it's really nice.
So Bob's on
This is great
for
work.
December 3rd.
Yeah. I saw your name, though, was listed as the
No.
presenter.
No, you didn't. It's you.
Yeah, okay.
And that's on the
Not me.
3rd?
That's on the
That's on the
3rd,
December
yes.
3rd, so you're saying, right?
I will be skipping my planning board meeting to be at the CPC meeting
Good.
on that evening. Is there anything else anyone
This is
wishes
great.
to discuss?
No, thank you,
This is really
Bob.
good.
That's great.
So the goal is to make these as identified as?
These are ones we should
clusters?
look, not districts,
Okay.
but clusters.
Clusters, okay.
Which is, it's a different thing. It's not necessarily a district, but it is a part of the MACRIS database as being identified as areas of interest, historic interest.
Okay.
And it's not just, these are homes, but it's other things besides that. You know, we've talked about some, well, graveyards is very much part of that, but I know that's very well handled by the Cemetery Commission. There's nothing we have to overlap there.
Right.
But other things, whether they're, like the wharfs that we used to have on C Street and all that, we can designate that as an area of interest. Even though they're not there, you can still document, like at South Harwich Beach, there's a sign the Historical Society put up showing a picture of the wharfs that were off Red River Beach. You know, it's a place to visit if you're a tourist looking for historic things. That's the kind of thing you do.
What time is the CPC meeting?
What's that?
What time is?
6.
6, okay, couldn't remember.
I'm not sure what room we're in, though.
Oh.
Because of planning, we might be in the small meeting, in the small meeting room.
Okay. Just wanted to get it on here.
Anything people would like to see on the next agenda? No? All right, then motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are